Hey, friend, I am so excited to be on the podcast with you today. I am back in my office as I took last week off. It was one of the most challenging weeks last week. Have you ever had life hit you in a way that you didn't expect, kind of come out of nowhere, and then it really just shifts everything that you have planned? Well, that happened to me last week. I found out that my mom was in the ICU. I knew she had been admitted to the hospital and wasn't given all the information right away about her condition, and it was deteriorating. And then she wasn't receiving, in my opinion, the care that she needed. So I flew back to Pennsylvania and went to the hospital, was able to speak with the team, the cardiologist, and they talked with the chief medical officer because the care that she was receiving was not what her prognosis needed and what her condition served. So was able to advocate for her to have an ambulance transport down to Philadelphia to a hospital that can better meet her care and her needs. And let me just tell you, I drove my dad down and we spent all the time that we could from even beyond visiting hours because I negotiated to come earlier and stay longer than the visiting hours. And I tell you all this because life does get stressful, and it was very stressful last week. I thought I was going to lose my mom. All the emotions come up with that, and luckily I am back. Her care is better, and we shall see how this chapter begins to unfold, this next chapter of her life. I was there and I experienced all the emotions like I mentioned, and I just want to communicate this is that it is so important to be an advocate for your care, for your health. And when something is telling you that something is off, like my gut was saying this isn't right, everything I'm finding out online and reading about, this is not the right test she should be doing, this is not the right sequence she should be doing, trusting my gut and talking and communicating about that and really not demanding in like a negative way, but demanding in like, I care and this is what I'm seeing and this is what I understand and really advocate for yourself. I am so fortunate that I had the opportunity to go and advocate for her care. And that's what this podcast is going to be about, is really listening to yourself and doing small tweaks that really make a big change. I don't want to sit here and ponder about what would have happened if we didn't get her transferred down to the hospital for better care in Philadelphia, but I really want you to take away from this is when you see things going the direction you don't want them to go, and it doesn't have to be so catastrophic as like an ICU admission. It could be something that is like, I'm getting a bit off track here. My drinking has creeped up. My weight has creeped up. Menopause has hit me in a way that I don't know, but I'm not feeling the way I should be for how young I am. If you're in your 50s, that's young. If you're in your 60s, that's young. We have lifespans that go beyond 80 now. And with the new technologies coming out, they're advancing medicine like super long, where we're going to be living to well over 100. Just of all the longevity things coming down, all the things that we're learning about ourselves and how we can reverse some of that aging process and even slow it. So if we can't reverse it, we know we can slow it. And how promising is that? And just the technology I had to learn, that technology that they're thinking about this procedure for my mom, it didn't exist when I went to pharmacy school. This is like a whole new procedure and another way to optimize her health and her care at this phase. So these small habit changes, these small tweaks make a huge difference. Like just that transfer to the new hospital made a huge difference in how she was feeling the next day. It made a huge difference in just not her anxiety level, but just the way we were able to understand what had to happen next and the sequence of events. And then she started breathing better and her kidney function started coming back online. Like one small habit change can create so much. And really, that's what I want to dive into. If you've ever read BJ Fogg's book called Tiny Habits, if you haven't, I recommend it. It's a pretty good book. He even talks about some of the ways to break long-standing habits. And that was where I was at with my drinking, right? It was a long-standing habit. It just seemed like something I couldn't break. And it can seem overwhelming, and it did seem overwhelming to me if you were to tell me I'm going to take away alcohol and you were going to be sober for the rest of your life. That felt like terrible news. That felt like, oh my gosh, why would I want to live my life that way? Oh, I'm not even interested in that being the outcome. And so my brain couldn't wrap around that because it had been so ingrained in my life. When I'm working with drinking, right, we don't want to create more fear. We don't want to create more anxiety. We don't want to create more negative feelings because oftentimes we're drinking to suppress those negative feelings. And when I'm working with women in Transform and 10 so they can lose weight, we're not going to like break up with sugar forever if that's not what they want. We're just going to look at those small habit changes, those tiny habit changes that we can get wins today that eventually down the road your brain may be like, oh, I didn't think that was possible for me. And now I see that as possible. And now I actually want it. When we don't think something is available to us, like anything, like maybe owning a private jet or whatever, if you're into material things, maybe you can't see that that is possible for you. But once you start making tiny changes, tiny habit changes, then you start to open up like, oh, well, maybe this is possible, owning my own car outright without, a loan on it or a lease on it. So then you start to like, oh, I can own transportation by myself. And so those tiny habits begin to unfold where then your mind begins to expand and saying, oh, well, maybe I could have that for my life. And I know with women, we operate under a lot of limiting beliefs. I'm too old. This has been going on too long. This can't happen to me. I always seem to fall off. I don't have a good relationship with failure, like the things I talked about on last week's podcast. A lot of times we don't have a good relationship with the word and our self-trust. We say we're going to do things and then we don't follow through. So those are areas and opportunities where I work with women to improve that. Because then when we see these small, tiny habit changes, we can see that, oh, the trajectory to get where I want to go can be more possible. Can we guarantee it's going to be possible? No, nobody can. But we can see, oh, if we go down this path, it's more likely that it's possible. And so when you're changing your relationship with alcohol, when you're changing your relationship with your body to try to understand it more, to take care of it better, so you can optimize your health, you can feel good, it does come down to small, tiny habit changes. And when you pick up BJ Fogg's book, if you do, I just want to point out on page 214, he talks about breaking the chain because some of us need to break bad habits and we can't start good habits if we still have these bad habits running in the subconscious area, right? Like we want to get healthy. We want to get healthy. We want to get healthy. I hear this from women all the time. I want to get healthy. I want to get healthy. Oh, but my relationship with alcohol, I need to break this first because this is really blocking me from all the things that I want to do with my health. And so inside Epic U, we're working through those tools. And one of the big things that he talks about, which is what we work on so much inside the program Epic U, is breaking that mental chain. It's the mindset. It's that mental effort that we need to put in so that we can change the habits. We can change our behaviors. And so focusing on that mental effort, doing that mental effort, focusing on that mindset so that we can get the result that we want or more likely to get the result that we want. And here's the thing. When you think you are more likely to get something, you get to embrace that joy and that contentment and that satisfaction now, even without having that thing. So I remember when I was cutting back on drinking and I brought my drink count down significantly, 50, 60, 70% within the first couple of months of doing this work. I was like, wow. And it's being sustained. I'm not going back to drinking that quantity as I did weeks and weeks. Yeah, maybe I've had some slip ups or some slip weeks or some slip days, but it wasn't like I spent months going backwards like I had in the past. I was like, oh, I just had a couple of days where I slipped up, or I just had 3 days or 6 days. And then I got right back to doing the work. And guess what? Oh, now I'm sustaining success. Now I'm getting closer to where I want to be. This feels really good. And when I look over the course of that year, if I was to count up all the drinks I had in that year versus the previous year, that mental work led to changes in my behavior. And I think people want to just change the behavior. Absolutely. But if you don't change the mindset leading to the behavior, guess what's going to happen? You're going to keep falling back into that behavior over and over and over again. You're going to be constantly looking to the food for comfort, looking to the drink for comfort. Maybe that provides you safety in the past. Maybe that was a way to deal with problems in the past. Maybe that's what your brain learned is my safe zone, is my comfort zone, is what helps me get through and deal with this life. And I could tell you that that is changeable. And that is the best news ever to hear that that is changeable. So stressed out last week, and I didn't even want a sip of alcohol. I was like, no desire for it. Had no alcohol last week. I didn't rely on my Coke Zero like I normally do, sometimes during stressful times. I just didn't want it. I'm like, my goodness, health matters. Look at my mom fighting for her health. If you don't have your health, ladies, you don't think about anything else. You don't think about your finances. You don't think about anything else. You're so concerned, am I going to make it? How much longer do I have to live? Without our health, nothing else matters. And that's why I'm such an advocate. I'm an advocate for my health, my parents' health, your health, and that's why I want you informed. Because without the information, you don't know what you're advocating for. You don't know what the end game looks like. You don't know what's possible. I was talking with some doctors who would think like this was the end for my mom. And maybe that is true. But what about what else is possible? And finding those strategies and those procedures and those tests that we could do to get better information, to better understand the full condition. And then what else is possible? Maybe there are miracles that happen. And I'm praying and I'm reaching out to my prayer warriors on text. And I said, please pray for my mom. And this is what's going on and my temperament. And please pray for my temperament because I want to rip some people's heads off right now. But I know that's not going to help. And there was such power in that. Miracles came through because of thinking what is possible. And I want you to think of that for you. And it takes small behavior changes, mindset shifts. Mindset shifts make a huge, huge difference. So, did you know that our happiness is not just something that comes out of the sky? Our happiness depends on our attitude, on how we handle inevitable changes that we encounter, and how we handle inevitable challenges that we encounter. Yes, it's our attitude. It's the mindset. And I knew when I flew to Pennsylvania, I was going to fight for everything to optimize her health, to get it back to the best it could be, despite her limitations in her organ function. It's not going to be optimal in terms of my health, but it's going to be optimal for her. And that's what I want for you. Have great health so you can live a fulfilled life, a life worth meaning. And this is by sitting in those hospitals day and night, both hospitals day and night, just solidified my resolve to help women better understand their health and better advocate through any doctor, through any nurse, through any respiratory therapist, through the nutritionist that came by asking her what she wanted for lunch and dinner and like tweaking even that, given her condition, because they're just the food service. They don't know exactly what might be going on with her and what would be best meals, and to advocate for more protein, because that might not be the options that they are providing her. But when you know more, you can advocate for more and you can advocate for better. And so happiness is not something outside of us. Happiness is something that we generate within. We generate by our attitude and we generate by our mindset. That is all something within our control. That doesn't mean the circumstances were pretty. The circumstances were not pretty. The circumstances were dire. But I can go there with a dire mental state and then guess what? Just accept what is, which is not bad. That's one option. But I rather dream of what is possible. Advocate for what is better. Advocate for health. Advocate for her and what her wishes are and what she was willing to do and what she was wanting to do. Did she want these to be the last days on earth or not? And she didn't. So let's keep advocating for more life and more health if that's what you want. So making these small habit changes, we think it's all about the actions we need to take. And absolutely, execution is everything. Absolutely, you need to be taking action, powerful action moves, not just any action, but action that actually leads to the direction you want to go. And that's where a lot of us get confused. We think that The experts walking in the room have our best interest in mind. They have an interest in mind, and it might be just what they've been grown up in or what they've learned in school, which may be, like I said, outdated. There's a procedure that they mentioned that she may be a candidate for, and I'm like, wow, I never heard of this procedure. And I'm looking it up online. I'm like, wow, I didn't know that this was out there. And so when you expand your mind and you can expand your mindset, and then that's what's going to lead to changes in your behavior. Let me ask you a question. How many of you have tried to change a behavior only to come back to doing the old behavior rather than the new behavior? Maybe you want to drink less or not at all, and you find yourself drinking. Maybe you want to lose 10 pounds. But you don't find yourself doing the things that you think are going to get you there. And most of the time, women think it's just diet and exercise. Big two components, but it's not just diet and exercise, particularly if you're over 40. So how many times have you set out to change that behavior, but haven't done it? It's probably because your mindset is stuck somewhere. It's got either the wrong information about what is going to accomplish it. Like I just mentioned, if you just focus on diet and exercise, ladies, to get the optimal health level that you want beyond 40, 45, and 50, you'll get some result. Absolutely. But will you get optimal results? No. You got to really focus in on some other key components I talk about all the time on this podcast, right? Your microbiome, so important. If that's not generating all the healthy nutrients that it needs to, the serotonin, you're keeping your immune system up, allowing you to actually absorb nutrients that you eat. And if you're destroying your microbiome with tons of alcohol, you're not going to be absorbing the nutrients from the broccoli and the stuff that you're eating outside of that. So everything interplays. And sleep, we talk about that, and hydration, and all the things that I educate women on and help them with inside of Transform in 10. Because your body is a whole symphony. It's interconnected. It's not just two categories and two buckets of diet and exercise. It's much bigger than that. Diet and exercise does work so well in our 20s and 30s, but it stops working so well in our 40s and 50s because we got other systems that really need fine-tuning. So we just don't want to change out tires while our check engine light is still on, right? That's not going to help the car run more effectively. And so we know our mitochondria are dying and changing and getting all toxified, and we want to detox all of that and make sure we clean out that engine so we can power it up, so we can rev up and have more energy and be fuel efficient. And that means that we're able to burn fat. So many of our systems are clogged and not burning fat because we just keep feeding it glucose and sugar and glucose and sugar. And so it's never going to burn fat. So that's why we become fat adapted. So when you start implementing just these tiny habits, any tiny habit, that's when you start to get small wins. And those small wins add up over time to get massive transformation. There's a great quote from James Clear that I like. It says, you can lose yourself one small compromise at a time, but you can also transform yourself with one small win at a time. So when we look at those small, tiny habits, a lot of us think they're too small to do anything, but they're not. They're the catalyst that gets us to bigger wins and bigger wins. And here's also what I want to offer. When you think about a massive goal, let's throw something out there. You want to lose 20 pounds. That would feel amazing. Absolutely. Just think of how free your body would move, how more efficiently it would move if you struggle with weight gain. And so getting those 20 pounds off sounds awesome. But then when you go to try to exercise, right, you might be thinking, oh, that's such a long way. Oh, I'm going to have to keep going for months and months at a time to actually achieve that, right? So the goal can be motivating, but then when you go to do the process, it's probably not motivating. So this is where I help women. It's like, let's look at the goal for motivation and let's look at the process and break it down to small, tiny habits that you can do to get you moving. And when you do that, then you get to feel the power of momentum. The first week at the gym probably doesn't feel that good. The second week, maybe it feels better, but maybe you're not on autopilot yet. By the third week, you're like, okay, I got this down. I know how to use the machine, or I'm doing this, or maybe you're starting to exercise at home and it's starting to feel a part of you. It's starting to feel doable. It's starting to feel like, oh, part of me wants to do this exercise. At first, you're probably fighting and saying, oh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. It's so hard. My body's so sore. But after doing it for a while, what happens? Your body starts seeing the small wins. You start feeling more energetic. You may have not even noticed a tremendous amount of weight loss on the scale, but what happens? Your confidence starts to rise. You start to feel better about yourself. You look at yourself different in the mirror. Your clothes already feel different, even though maybe your body hasn't changed that much, but you feel more empowered. And this is what happens when you take that one small, tiny habit. So I love to think of tiny habits as something that we can execute. It's not just a figment out there. We're listening to this podcast, we get the inspiration, but then also we want to apply it to our lives. So how do we do that? Sherry, help me do that. And I'd be glad to help you do that. How do you do a tiny, small habit? I say, pick one habit you want to do every day. It doesn't have to be the same habit, actually, right? But you pick one that you're going to implement every day. It could change, right? As I said, it doesn't have to be, I'm going to the gym, I'm going to the gym, I'm going to the gym, or I'm going to eat more protein, I'm going to eat more protein, I'm going to eat more protein. It doesn't have to be the same thing the whole month. And I actually suggest that that's not helpful. I actually suggest shifting it and changing it up and doing one small, tiny habit each and every day. And you do that and you consider it a win. You don't do it and say, okay, now that I did that, I should do more. No shoulding. Now that you do that, you want to do more. That's better energy, right? Because we're looking to maximize your energy and frame this in a way that is sustainable, in a way that you're inviting yourself to keep going. Because a lot of times we block ourselves. I should do this. My doctor said this is important for my health, right? We're like externalizing it. Or we're making ourselves feel bad, like, oh, I should want to do this, but I actually don't, right? That's actually inviting in more negative energy rather than inviting ourselves into a story that we want to be a part of. Like, wow, I just did that one tiny habit and I feel good. Now that makes me want to do X. And so when you just cross it off, this is for my list lovers. I love lists. I make lists all the time. I was making lists back on the airplane of like, my gosh, I lost a week. Now I got to run to this store, grab this, buy this Christmas gift, get the Christmas cards ready. Like all of the lists started coming. And yes, have that list. But then I put on what I wanted to do Monday. And I said, I'm going to do this one tiny habit. This is the biggest thing I want to accomplish today. And when I accomplish it, then I get to move on to something else. And I usually pick something that may be time bound, right? Like something that really is urgent. And sometimes when it's really urgent, we put it off until the final moment and the final deadline. And it's like, no, I need to do that because then that action is going to reduce anxiety. And that's what I find is by not taking any action, what happens? I get more anxious. Oh, I'm putting off drinking less for another month, another year. And what does that do? That fills and fuels my anxiety because I'm not doing any action about it. I'll put off losing that 5 pounds, then it becomes 10 pounds, then it becomes 15 pounds, then it becomes 20 pounds. And then all of a sudden we feel like, oh, that's just too much. I'm just not going to deal with it. Right. And so the problem compounds over time. Right. When I didn't take care of my drinking at 20, 25 drinks a week, right? I told you I was up to 30, 35, 40 until I decided to take some more serious action and get help. And for me, I wanted group and I wanted one-on-one because I wanted to know what was going wrong in my brain. It was helpful to hear what else was going on in other people's brains and how they were perceiving alcohol and how it was helping them because it allowed me to see, do I have that as well or don't I? So being involved with the group was amazing, but I also needed one-on-one coaching. I needed somebody to really get inside my head and really mix things up in there, find out the true story of the alcohol, and then help me rewrite it. And that's reframing. And so, as I mentioned in that book, Tiny Habits, we talk about that mental effort that is required to break bad habits. So required if you're looking to change your behavior around something. He also talks about a great concept called habit stacking. So if you're already doing some habit that's really good, like brushing your teeth, and you want to implement a new habit, a healthy habit, right? On top of a good habit you already have, you can habit stack. And I love how he breaks this down. He has a few good examples in the book, but he mentions if you're looking to like brush your teeth, you're very good at brushing your teeth, but you always fall through on flossing. Well, commit to one tiny habit. And that's not just flossing all of your teeth, it's flossing one tooth. Commit to flossing one tooth. When you floss that one tooth, you're done. And then it's like, oh, well, that felt good. Gosh, that felt really nice. Then over time, you might want to floss 2 teeth and 3 teeth, and you might want to do your whole mouth, right? But if you commit to just the tiny habit of one tooth, that's so doable. And then that tiny habit motivates you to do more. It's also like the concept that they talk about. If you can just motivate or get yourself to walk through the door frame or the threshold of your gym, and you just say, I'm going to stay there for 5 minutes, that's the tiny habit. And then once you're there, you might be like, now that I'm here and I see other people working out, that motivates me to work out. Let me just try one machine. So you go to one machine, whatever machine that is, cardio, weights, whatever. And you do it and you're like, that was pretty good. Now I can go home. And that's a win. Or you might feel motivated and inspired to do more. Your body might say, that felt really good to move my legs. That felt really good to move my arms. That felt really good to do that. Let's do a little more. Let's see if I can get a little more in. Let's push myself. So it's that tiny habit that leads to, again, more habit change and leads to more momentum for you. So when you do that one tiny habit, as I mentioned, your brain's going to want to say, yeah, that's insignificant. Brushing one tooth, yeah, that's pretty insignificant. But it isn't. And here's why. One, you've considered it a win, right? So that one tiny habit, you put it on your calendar, floss one tooth, you get to cross it off. What does that do? Gives you a dopamine hit. And it tells your brain you've been successful for the day. Like, how amazing is that? I want to feel successful for the day. Like, that's awesome. So set up a system where you get to feel successful. So you pick out a tiny habit and you do it. And that's a win. So that's one benefit you get from it. Another one is you get joy. It helps you to experience like, oh, I'm doing this one small thing for myself. And as women, we're constantly doing for others, right? We're doing all the things at work our boss wants us to do, our patients want us to do, our clients want us to do, our customers want us to do. We're making everybody else happy. We're making the cakes and all the things and the dinner for the family, and we're making our husbands happy, and we're making our kids happy, and we're running the social calendar. We're doing all of that for everybody. And that's wonderful. But this is one habit, one tiny habit that you get to claim success for yourself. And then that fuels you with some joy. Even if it's temporary, joy is not permanent. But I'll take temporary joy for sure. And especially if I'm in charge of that and I could give that to myself every day, sign me up. As I'm driving to the hospital in the morning, navigating the streets of Philadelphia, hearing my dad in the back saying, turn here, and he's wrong. He thinks he knows where he's going. I'm sitting there going, I'm going to get to see my mom today. What a gift. What a blessing. There's going to be a time where I don't get to say that. And I'm giving myself joy despite when things are hard, despite when things are difficult, despite when there's going to be some challenging decisions to be made ahead. And I don't even know what all of those are, but today I get to see my mom. And that provided me so much joy. Another thing a tiny habit does is when you commit to doing that one tooth, that one push-up, that 5 minutes at the gym, and you follow through, what does that do? That builds your self-trust. Wow, how does that feel? I made a commitment to myself. I don't care how small it was, but I followed through. And now I'm building my self-trust. And let me tell you, you feel proud. You feel like your self-esteem is going up. You feel so good. You're going to have one less drink and you do it. Wow, I followed through on my word. Ladies, there is no better feeling than that. When you can follow through on your word, it really is ultimately satisfying. And so these tiny habits, I don't want you to think of them as insignificant. I don't want you to think of them as trivial. I want you to think of them as life-altering. I want you to think of them as transformational, because that is the fact. One small habit begets another small habit change. And tiny habits is maybe all that your brain can handle and muster now to get you unstuck. And I want to tell you, it all starts with these tiny habits. They are significant and they do make a huge impact. And when you go from complaining about something, saying this shouldn't have happened, when I'm telling my mom's cardiologist, I don't understand why this is happening, and she's had a scan done 5 days ago and no radiologist is here at the hospital to read it. For 5 days, we're just waiting for answers. This doesn't make sense to me. And he's like, I get it. It doesn't make sense. I said, let's talk to the chief medical officer. He gets on the phone with the chief medical officer, like, we need better care. This is my mom. Like, she's unstable. We need answers. And so instead of complaining about it and inviting in negative energy into your life and into your space, let's invite energy that says what could be done, what is possible, what can we do here? Can we transfer her to another hospital? Can we do that? And the answers will surprise you, my friend. I guarantee when you open up your mind to allow good energy in and allow small, tiny habits to take hold in your life, you are inviting in new energy. You're inviting in possibility, and you are inviting in miracles. It's a beautiful space to be in. And I invite you into that space. All right, my friend, so amazing to be with you. Love seeing you here on YouTube. If you're following me on YouTube, please hit follow or subscribe or whatever the button is there. And if you liked this episode, please share it with a friend. I'd love to inspire more women on their journey to drinking less, losing weight, and improving their life. All right, my friend, thanks so much, and I will see you next week.